There you go, folks. Ross, Devil's Advocate again. I'm here at the Milton Markets. Now, I'll give you a little... Now, there's Trevor Evans. Down there are the greens. Let's see if we can zoom in on them. No, the greens. Haven't seen Labor, the Nationals, or any other slimes. But I'm going to wind up pausing after this. Go have a chat with them and see what I can do. See what they've got to say for themselves. Okay, see you soon. Alright, now, good morning, Trevor.
Good morning.
Okay, now, what's because there's been a few articles on social media, of course, which I find hard to cross-reference when they're talking of things like Labor and Liberal are talking about preferencing each other. What's the understanding of that being a member?
It's really easy to tell that we're not, because you just look at our how to vote cards, the things that we issue there, and you have a look at how far down each party is. Now, of course, we have, as you and I have discussed before, compulsory preferential voting, which means technically to have a valid vote, you've got a number every square, which means you do have to allocate a number to every party. And so there's no ability for a party to say don't put a number in the box of any opponent party, but the thing you've got to do is you've got to try to put them into an order. And so, for instance, here in the seat of Brisbane, Labor's certainly not our number 2 recommendation.
Okay.
So
all you had to say was no, that we're not.
Not as far as I'm aware. Oh, I mean, clearly not.
Okay.
Clearly not.
Now, when it comes to the digital currency bill, which I've raised that subject before with you, and the fact that we have different levels of government and different characters involved, there is a number of articles that I've seen that literally China is going around to the citizens and digging up their gardens, making them reliable on more reliant on the government.
Right.
And Daniel Andrews has brought in some agricultural bill, apparently, where he is authorised now he can go around and dig up your gardens,
right,
or do it to the agricultural industry down there.
Wow.
Which is still hearsay at this stage. What would be your point of view on legislations that go along those lines?
Well,
what are they going to say? The head of lettuce has got coronavirus.
Well, I'm not sure. I guess the number one principle would be, private landowners are allowed to do, a whole lot of things on their land. A whole lot of things. And
but legislation that I understand that Andrews is trying to bring in allows him to come on and just dig it up.
Right. Well, that would be extraordinary if that was true. I guess with some of our state premiers, always willing to be surprised because, they have done some pretty remarkable things.
When does the federal government actually put their foot in between them and say, no, yous are being fucking draconian now?
Yeah, well, we can obviously take state governments to court, but if they're legislating on something that's their power, they win. Keep in mind that Constitution was written by the states and the feds aren't on top of it. They're underneath the states in the Constitution.
No, if it goes against the federal Constitution, aren't they allowed to step in?
No.
See, now, what's the fucking use of the federal government? Why do we vote for you?
Well,
Bunch of pricks anyway.
The federal government was created by the states. Who wrote the federal Constitution?
A bunch of monarchists.
Or the states.
Monarchists. All of them were written by monarchists.
I think if you
we need a new constitution that clearly defines everybody's rights. Something like the American Constitution. That book is only about the size of 2 50-cent pieces. And yet,
Australian Constitution.
No, the American Constitution.
Right.
And it spells out their rights in the amendments.
Yeah.
Right? Or the Bill of Rights.
Well, a Bill of Rights is more of a European style approach than it is an Australian or a British one. Ultimately, bills of rights probably end up with more going in court and decided by court than not. I agree with you in the sense that I think most Australians would be right up for a chat around federation reform and rebalancing what the states are responsible for and what the feds are
unless
responsible
they're
for
monarchists.
after the last couple
but
of
by
years.
the same token, having said that, I want to read the Constitution that anything is going to be before it's being voted on.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't want to vote on it and say, yeah, let's be a republic, and then have the politicians write up the Constitution, because that's like giving the keys to the fucking mouse to the cheese factory.
The last time there was a referendum on changing our Constitution, it was about becoming a republic, and Aussies voted it down. And one of the many reasons they probably did is because they were presented with a text of what the Constitution would look like with the changes, and there were lots of red lines through it, lots of red ink, changing things and deleting things, and that's probably why a lot of people decided to vote no in 1999 when that last referendum
Wasn't there also a referendum about bringing in an Australia card?
Well, before my time, if it was, it would have been
1988. You're a federal politician. You should know some of this stuff.
I was 6 years old, Ross. But yes.
1988, the referendum came in, said the government and the federal and the state government said, let's bring in an Australia card. The people went no. Right now, this digital currency that you're supposedly bringing in is basically an Australia card.
Okay.
Because with the digital currency gives the government control. Same as an Australia card would have given the government all the information instantly on people.
I don't think digital currency automatically does give government control.
I know two people in Australia that have already had their bank accounts closed. One of them I've met and even interviewed. Right. The other one was nothing but a do-gooder, and I don't say that in a real bad way, even though I make it sound that way. And he was helping people in Lismore who were knocked out by that rain when the lack of state or federal assistance there was appalling. Right now, he went down there and he was collecting money and he was giving it out, and he kept accounts for everyone. Anyone who asked for him, he would show them all the accounts. Anyone who, and he literally advertised, the X came in, Y went out.
So what was he doing with digital currency there, or that's not?
No, the bank account. The bank's closed. The government closed his account.
Right.
He can't distribute money. He can't receive money. He can't help people out now. Right. So because they said, he's doing it fraudulently.
Was he?
Well, that's under investigation. It's been about 3 weeks, and he hasn't even been approached by the police to be asked any questions about fraudulency.
Right.
Now, wouldn't you think on a case of fraudulency, wouldn't there be a close the bank accounts and go see him the next day?
Don't know about that case. When I have seen investigations by groups like the ACCC and ASIC, for instance, it usually takes up to a couple of years to prepare a case and end up in court and so on, because some of these things are pretty complex in terms of financial affairs.
Well, instead of just closing someone's bank account down first,
I don't know.
Shouldn't there have been some investigation first?
I don't know. Maybe there was.
No, not from what I understand, because if there's an investigation, you generally go see the people involved, wouldn't you? You go, look, we're from federal agencies, we want to see this.
With organised crime, for instance, a lot of the time they go in and...
He's not organised crime, he was doing charitable work.
I'm just responding to the questions you're asking me. You said...
Well, be realistic, don't throw off on organised crime, which is a completely different issue.
Well, you asked me the question, wouldn't you always go and interview people first before you closed anything down? And my answer was, actually, there's clear examples of times when you wouldn't. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, well, when it comes to organised crime, yes, of course, that's common sense.
Well, there could be other.
But there's due process in there.
Well, I don't know what other common sense examples there might be, and I don't know about that case. So.
What about this Pfizer dump? The data dump from Pfizer. You're not keeping up with it?
No. As we've discussed before, Ross, I think issues that you've raised with me over the last couple of years in relation to governments around the world and COVID and the pandemic response. I think for most of the voters that I'm talking with out on the streets every single day, that's more and more an issue that's in the rear vision mirror. I talk to 10 times as many people now about cost of living, about jobs and things like that. So,
if Pfizer hadn't have brought out, if this government had actually been realistic about this pandemic, when it's not, it looks more like a plandemic, where it's more about government control than actual health. Because if the government was actually cared about health, they'd be more concerned about the amount of people dying of obesity rather than the COVID, because more people are dying of obesity. More people are dying of many things other than COVID, right? So if they were more concerned about health, which bringing in the draconian lockdowns probably knocked out 20% of the small businesses in Australia. It put a lot of mental stress on a lot of people, and it basically effed over our economy. Now, where does the government get off doing that when they're not looking at the Pfizer data, which was suppressed in the first place, which is now being released, and officials, the academics who are able to go through this stuff, jumping up and going, they need to be put up on crimes against humanity for suppressing that information, because the amount of deaths that happen through those clinical trials, that vaccine should never have been released. Never have been released.
Well, there's lots to unpack in that, and I think we've covered it a fair bit in some of your previous videos. Obviously important not to blur the lines between what state governments have done and what the federal government's done, but at the end of the day, one of the reasons that COVID was different to other health issues like obesity, like the common flu and like other things, is that in the minds of many people those things are baked in and part of life, whereas this was new and different and was very worrying for a lot of people, and that those people were asking and hoping that governments would respond to that.
All right, 11 minutes.
All right.
I've taken up enough of your time.
Thanks, Ross.
Okay, well this is the Greens who have refused to do an interview. No, you can walk past, Alan. They didn't want an interview. They wanted me to.
Not today, okay? So thanks very much.
I'm not. I'm just giving coverage. They didn't want to do an interview. They wanted me to make an appointment, as always, and you get brick walled there when you got stuff all people following you. Maybe if I had 1 million followers, they might do something. But again, like Trevor Evans, done him. And normally Labor is down here, but they're nowhere to be seen today, nor any independents. Anyway, that's about it for now. I'm going to go for a little walk around and see if I can find some independents or some other people. Well, that's it, Milton Markets. There was a third party platform there, but their member wasn't there doing a Mother's Day thing. It's a woman. But either Greens, who didn't want to talk, Trevor Evans, who just waffles on all the time anyway, and that was it. So for the Milton Markets, that's it. And that's probably the last chance I'm going to get to speak with politicians before the federal election. 2 weeks to go, maybe. We'll see how it goes. Right, folks, take it easy.